Introduction. The next time someone provokes you, do something different. Don't fire back. Don't rush to defend yourself. Don't send the angry message sitting in your drafts. Don't spend the entire night replaying the conversation. Stop. Take a breath. Give yourself a moment before you give someone else control over what happens next. That moment may seem small, but it can change everything. Most of us have experienced the regret that follows an emotional reaction. You say too much. You reveal something you shouldn't. You attack someone you love. You quit when you should have waited. You chase someone who was already walking away. Later, when the anger fades, you realize the decision wasn't really yours. Your emotion made it for you. This is where emotional strength begins, with the decision to stop living on impulse. You will still get angry. You will still feel hurt. People will still disappoint you. Some will lie to you, criticize you, manipulate you, or deliberately push your buttons. You cannot prevent every difficult moment, but you can train yourself to meet those moments differently. Instead of exploding, pause. Instead of defending every accusation, listen and decide whether it deserves an answer. Instead of chasing approval, stand firmly in your own values. Instead of trying to control another person's behavior, control your access to it. Instead of carrying every insult, ask whether it deserves space in your mind. Instead of allowing an old wound to dictate a new decision, recognize the wound and choose differently. This audiobook is not asking you to become cold. It is asking you to become deliberate. You will learn how to catch your triggers before they control your behavior. You will practice creating distance between emotion and action. You will learn how to stay composed under pressure, recognize emotional bait, release the need to control what cannot be controlled, and build boundaries that you are actually willing to enforce. Most importantly, you will learn to stop giving away your peace so easily, because emotional freedom isn't achieved when nobody can upset you. It is achieved when someone can upset you, and you still decide what you do next. That is the skill you are about to build. Not reacting blindly, not surrendering your judgment, not allowing every person, problem, or painful moment to take over your mind. You will feel the emotion, you will face the moment, and then you will choose your response. That choice is where your strength begins. Chapter 1. Hunt down the triggers that control you. Most people think they lose control because someone else made them angry. They blame the rude comment, the disrespectful coworker, the difficult family member, the unanswered message, or the person who pushed exactly the wrong button. But if you want to become emotionally unbreakable, you have to look deeper. The event may have started the reaction, but something inside you decided how powerful that event would become. This is not about blaming yourself for every emotion you experience. It is about taking responsibility for what happens after the emotion arrives. Anger is human. Hurt is human. Fear is human. The goal is not to eliminate these feelings. The goal is to recognize them early enough that they don't start making decisions on your behalf. Think about the situations that repeatedly disturb your peace. Maybe you become defensive whenever someone criticizes your work. Perhaps being ignored makes you feel unimportant. Maybe rejection immediately convinces you that you are not good enough. Perhaps disrespect makes you feel an overwhelming need to prove yourself. You may notice that certain people can change your mood within seconds, while others have no effect on you at all. That difference matters. It means the real problem is not simply what happened. It is the meaning your mind attached to what happened. Someone doesn't reply to your message and your mind says, they don't respect me. Someone disagrees with you and your mind says, they think I'm incompetent. Someone walks away and your mind whispers, I'm not worth staying for. The event is one thing, the story you build around it is another. Your first task is to separate those two. Start paying attention to your emotional patterns. The next time you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed, don't immediately ask, "Who is making me feel this way?" Ask, "What exactly has been activated inside me?" Maybe it's your fear of rejection. Maybe it's your need for control. Maybe it's an old insecurity. Maybe it's the desire to be understood. Maybe you cannot tolerate feeling powerless. You cannot change a pattern you refuse to examine. Begin creating a personal trigger map. When something sets you off, write down 4 things. What happened? What did you feel? What did you immediately tell yourself about the situation? What did you want to do next? This simple exercise can reveal patterns you have been repeating for years. You may discover that your anger often appears after you feel ignored. You may realize that your defensiveness is actually fear wearing a louder disguise. You may notice that your urge to chase someone comes from discomfort with being alone. You may finally see that your strongest reactions are often connected to your deepest insecurities. Once you see the pattern, you have something to work with. The next time a familiar trigger appears, don't wait until you're already overwhelmed. Catch the earliest signal. Notice the tightening in your chest. Notice your thoughts speeding up. Notice the urge to send the message, raise your voice, prove your point, or immediately defend yourself. That is your warning. That is the moment to intervene. Tell yourself, "Something in me has been triggered. I don't have to act on it yet." Those words create distance between you and the emotion. Remember, emotional strength is not measured by whether you ever become angry. It is measured by what you do with your anger. It is not about never feeling rejected. It is about refusing to let rejection determine your worth. It is not about avoiding difficult people. It is about becoming aware of the buttons they can no longer push so easily. Your emotions are signals, not commands. They can tell you that something matters. They can point toward a fear, a boundary, or an unresolved wound. But they should not automatically become your instructions. So begin today. Identify the 3 situations that most reliably disturb your peace. Study them without judgment. Look for the emotion beneath the reaction. Find the story your mind tells you. Then decide what a stronger response would look like. You are not trying to become someone who never gets triggered. You are becoming someone who notices the trigger before it takes control. And that is the first step toward becoming emotionally unbreakable. Chapter 2. Install the space between feeling and action. There is a moment most people never notice. It lasts only a few seconds, sometimes less, but it can determine what happens next. It is the space between what you feel and what you do about it. Someone insults you, and before you even think, you fire back. Someone criticizes you, and you immediately defend yourself. Someone pulls away, and you send 3 messages trying to get an explanation. The emotion arrives first, and your behavior follows behind it like a shadow. Emotional strength begins when you interrupt that sequence. You cannot always control the first emotion that rises inside you. You may not be able to stop the sudden rush of anger or the sting of rejection, but you can learn to stop emotion from automatically becoming action. That is where the pause becomes one of the most powerful skills you can develop. The pause is not weakness. It is not uncertainty. It is not surrender. The pause is a decision to remain in control long enough to choose your next move. Imagine someone says something deliberately insulting during an argument. Your first instinct might be to hit back with something even more painful. You already know exactly what to say. The words are ready. You can feel them rising, but instead of releasing them, you stop. You breathe once. You say nothing for a moment. You notice the heat in your body and the speed of your thoughts. Then you ask yourself a simple question. If I respond right now, will I be proud of my response tomorrow? That question can save you from countless regrets. The same principle applies to messages. When you're angry, don't immediately send the paragraph you've written in your head. Write it if you need to, but don't send it. Walk away, drink some water, let your body settle. Read the message again later. You may discover that what felt urgent an hour ago no longer deserves your attention. This is not about suppressing your feelings. It is about refusing to let temporary emotions create permanent consequences. Start practicing the pause in small situations. When traffic frustrates you, don't immediately become angry. When someone interrupts you, take a breath before responding. When you receive criticism, listen to the entire sentence before defending yourself. When a message feels rude, read it twice before deciding what it means. You are training your mind to stop treating every emotional signal like an emergency. A useful technique is to create a personal delay rule. If you're highly emotional, don't make major decisions. Don't end relationships. Don't resign from your job. Don't send confrontational messages. Don't make promises. Give yourself time. You might tell yourself, I can always respond later. I don't have to decide this while I'm angry. That sentence gives you something many people never give themselves: permission to wait. The pause also changes the way you communicate. Instead of saying, you always do this, you can say, I need a moment to think about what you just said. Instead of attacking, you can ask a question. Instead of escalating, you can lower your voice. Instead of trying to win, you can decide whether the conversation is worth continuing. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence can give you time to observe what is actually happening. Is the other person trying to solve a problem, or are they trying to provoke you? Are you responding to the present moment, or are you reacting to an old wound? Are you protecting something important, or are you simply trying to prove that you are right? The pause gives you time to find the answer. Practice this deliberately. The next time you feel the urge to react, count slowly to 10. Take one deep breath. Relax your shoulders. Feel your feet on the ground. Then ask yourself what outcome you actually want. Do you want peace, clarity, respect, a solution, distance? Choose the response that moves you toward that outcome. You will not master this skill overnight. There will be moments when you react too quickly. You will still have days when emotion gets the better of you. That's part of the process. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Maybe you pause for 2 seconds today when you used to react instantly. Tomorrow, you pause for 10. Eventually, the pause becomes part of who you are. And when that happens, something changes. You stop being pulled around by every emotion that enters your mind. You stop giving strangers, arguments, and difficult situations immediate access to your behavior. You begin to realize that between every trigger and every response is a space that belongs entirely to you. Protect that space. Use it wisely, because that small pause is where impulse ends and personal power begins. Chapter 3. Build a mind that doesn't collapse under pressure. Anyone can feel calm when nothing is going wrong. It is easy to be patient when everyone is cooperative, confident when everything is working, and relaxed when life follows the plan you made. But emotional strength is not revealed during comfortable moments. It is revealed when the pressure rises, the plans fall apart, and several problems arrive at the same time. That is when you discover how well you have trained yourself. Pressure has a way of exposing your habits. When you are overwhelmed, do you become aggressive? Do you shut down? Do you blame others? Do you panic and make decisions too quickly? Do you take your frustration out on the people closest to you? Or can you slow yourself down long enough to think clearly? The good news is that calmness is not simply something you're born with. It is a skill you can develop. You build it through repetition. Think of your mind like a muscle. If you only expect it to perform under extreme pressure without ever training it, you will struggle when the real test arrives. But if you practice composure during ordinary frustrations, you gradually build the ability to remain steady when life becomes genuinely difficult. Start with the small things. The next time you're stuck in traffic, notice your reaction. You are not trapped in an emergency, you are delayed. Those are two different things. Instead of feeding the frustration with thoughts like, "This always happens to me," or "I'm going to be late and everything is ruined," bring your attention back to what is actually happening. You are sitting in traffic. That's it. You cannot make the cars disappear by becoming angry. You cannot force the road to move faster by repeatedly checking the clock. Your frustration is understandable, but it is not useful. This is where you begin practicing emotional discipline. The same principle applies when someone is rude to you. You may not like their behavior, but you still have a choice about whether you allow their attitude to dictate yours. You can lower your voice instead of raising it. You can slow your words instead of speaking faster. You can take a step back instead of moving closer to conflict. Your body can help your mind regain control. When you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed, deliberately slow your breathing, relax your jaw, drop your shoulders, unclench your hands, put both feet firmly on the ground. These actions may seem simple, but they send a message to your nervous system that you are not required to remain in emergency mode. Then, narrow your focus. Don't try to solve your entire life while you're under pressure. Ask yourself one question: what is the next useful thing I can do? Not the perfect thing, not the thing that guarantees success, just the next useful thing. When your mind is overwhelmed, this question brings you back to action. If you've made a mistake, identify the next correction. If you're facing a difficult conversation, decide what needs to be said first. If a problem feels too large, break it into the smallest step you can take. Emotional stability grows when you stop turning one problem into 10 imaginary problems. Pressure often becomes unbearable because the mind begins predicting disasters that haven't happened. You receive one negative email and suddenly imagine losing your job. Someone doesn't respond to you and you assume the relationship is over. One setback becomes proof that everything is falling apart. Learn to challenge those stories. Ask, "What do I know for certain?" Then ask, "What am I assuming?" Those two questions can bring you back to reality. You should also practice staying calm when you don't get your way. This is one of the most important forms of emotional training. Someone cancels plans, a project takes longer than expected, a person disagrees with you, a result doesn't match your effort. Instead of treating disappointment as an emergency, treat it as practice. You are learning how to remain yourself when life refuses to cooperate. Every difficult moment gives you another opportunity to train. Every frustration is a repetition. Every disagreement is a chance to practice control. Every disappointment can teach you to recover without collapsing. Eventually, you begin to understand something powerful. You don't need life to become easier to become stronger. You need to become steadier. The goal is not to build a mind that never feels pressure. The goal is to build a mind that can experience pressure without immediately surrendering its judgment. When the world becomes loud, become deliberate. When problems multiply, slow down. When fear predicts disaster, return to facts. When anger demands action, create space. And when everything feels uncertain, focus on the next useful step. That is how emotional resilience is built, not in one dramatic breakthrough, but through hundreds of ordinary moments when you choose composure over chaos. You are not waiting for the storm to end before becoming strong. You are learning how to stand steady while it passes. Chapter 4. Become immune to emotional bait. Some people don't want to solve a problem with you. They want to pull you into one. They know what to say to make you defensive. They know which subject will make you angry. They know how to question your character, twist your words, or bring up something from the past just to watch you lose your composure. And once you react, the conversation changes. Suddenly, you're no longer discussing what they did. You're explaining why you reacted. This is the trap of emotional bait. If you want to become emotionally unbreakable, you have to learn to recognize the bait before you bite. Imagine someone making a deliberately insulting comment. Your instinct is to answer immediately. You want to prove them wrong. You want to make them feel the same pain they just caused you. But ask yourself, what happens if you refuse to play? The person who expected an explosion now gets silence. The person waiting for you to become defensive receives a calm question. The person hoping you'll lose control discovers that you are no longer predictable. That is emotional power. This doesn't mean you should tolerate disrespect or allow people to walk over you. It means you stop confusing self-control with surrender. You can defend yourself without becoming aggressive. You can disagree without becoming hostile. You can leave a conversation without needing the other person to admit they were wrong. Before responding to provocation, ask yourself 3 questions. What are they trying to get from me? What reaction are they expecting? And what happens if I refuse to give it to them? These questions can completely change the direction of an interaction. Sometimes the best response is a calm sentence. I don't agree with that. Sometimes it is a question, what makes you say that? Sometimes it is silence. And sometimes the strongest response is simply walking away. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't have to defend your character to someone who has already decided what they want to believe. There will be moments when someone deliberately pushes your buttons. They may insult you and then accuse you of being too sensitive when you react. They may provoke an argument and then portray themselves as the victim when you become angry. They may create confusion and then blame you for being confused. Don't let the conversation pull you away from reality. Return to the facts. What actually happened? What is being claimed? What part belongs to you? What part belongs to them? When you stay grounded in facts, emotional manipulation becomes less effective. Another powerful skill is refusing to over-explain. When you feel pressured to justify every decision, you often give the other person more material to argue with. A simple, "No, that doesn't work for me," may be enough. You don't need a 10-minute speech to make your boundary legitimate. The same applies to online arguments. Someone posts a comment designed to provoke you, and suddenly you're spending 30 minutes writing a response to a person who may forget the conversation 5 minutes later. Ask yourself whether your attention is worth the price. Your attention is valuable. Treat it that way. The goal isn't to become impossible to offend. That would be unrealistic. The goal is to become difficult to manipulate through your emotions. You can feel the anger without feeding it. You can notice the insult without carrying it. You can recognize the provocation without participating in it. The next time someone tries to pull you into an emotional reaction, don't ask, "How do I win this?" Ask, "Do I even need to play?" That question alone can save you from countless unnecessary battles. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to pick up every emotional weapon someone throws at you. Sometimes the greatest demonstration of strength is not striking back. It's realizing that the person trying to control your reaction has just discovered that they no longer can. Chapter 5. Release your grip on the uncontrollable. A surprising amount of emotional suffering comes from trying to manage things that were never yours to command. You want someone to understand your intentions. You want a person to change their behavior. You want the past to have unfolded differently. You want every effort to produce the outcome you imagined. And when reality refuses to cooperate, you fight it internally, replaying conversations, imagining different endings, and asking questions that have no answer. The harder you grip, the more exhausted you become. Emotional strength begins when you learn to separate what belongs to your control from what does not. You can control your choices, but you cannot control someone else's decisions. You can prepare carefully, but you cannot guarantee the result. You can communicate honestly, but you cannot force another person to understand you. You can offer love, but you cannot command someone to stay. You can work hard, but you cannot eliminate uncertainty. This distinction is simple, but living by it can transform your life. Think about how much energy is wasted trying to control other people's opinions. Someone misunderstands you, and you spend hours trying to convince them otherwise. Someone criticizes you, and you become obsessed with proving them wrong. Someone chooses to leave, and you search for the perfect explanation that might make them return. But what if you stopped chasing control where none existed? What if you accepted that some people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you explain yourself? What if you accepted that some people will dislike you even when you have done nothing wrong? What if you accepted that certain outcomes will never match your plans? Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means acknowledging reality instead of wasting your strength fighting against it. Start by dividing your concerns into two categories: what I can influence and what I must release. Under your influence are your effort, your attitude, your decisions, your boundaries, your preparation, your communication, and the way you respond. Outside your control are another person's choices, the past, unexpected events, other people's opinions, and many outcomes. Whenever you catch yourself obsessing over something in the second category, bring your attention back to the first. Ask yourself, what is actually mine to do here? That question cuts through mental noise. If someone is treating you poorly, you may not be able to control their character, but you can control how much access they have to you. If a project fails, you may not be able to change the result, but you can study what went wrong and decide what to do next. If someone rejects you, you cannot force them to choose differently, but you can choose not to turn their decision into a judgment about your worth. This is where detachment becomes powerful. You stop asking life to give you certainty before you allow yourself to be at peace. You stop demanding that everyone behave correctly before you decide to remain calm. You stop believing that your happiness must wait until circumstances become perfect. Try this exercise today. Think of one situation that has been consuming your mental energy. Write down everything about it that you cannot control. Then write down 3 things you can control right now. Take action on those 3 things. Then release the rest. You may have to repeat this process many times. The mind naturally returns to uncertainty because it wants guarantees, but life rarely provides them. Your strength grows each time you choose action over obsession and acceptance over resistance. Remember, letting go is not giving up. It is refusing to spend your life wrestling with reality. You don't need to control everything to be secure. You need to know what deserves your effort and what deserves your release. The moment you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you recover the energy you need to build the life that is actually within your hands. Chapter 6. Break free from the approval trap. There is a quiet form of emotional dependence that can control your life without you realizing it. It begins when you start measuring your worth through other people's reactions. You feel successful when you're praised, confident when you're accepted, and secure when everyone seems pleased with you. But the moment someone disapproves, criticizes, rejects, or misunderstands you, your confidence begins to disappear. This is the approval trap. The problem isn't wanting to be liked. That's human. The problem begins when being liked becomes more important than being honest with yourself. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You remain silent because you are afraid of conflict. You change your opinions to fit the room. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to lose someone. You explain yourself repeatedly to people who have already decided not to understand you. Slowly, without noticing, you begin living for an audience. Emotional strength requires you to step away from that audience. Ask yourself a difficult question. If nobody approved of this decision, would I still believe it was right for me? That question reveals how much of your life is driven by internal conviction and how much is driven by external approval. Imagine deciding to leave a situation that constantly drains you. The moment you do, someone calls you selfish. Suddenly, you begin doubting yourself. You start wondering whether you were wrong. You consider returning simply to avoid disappointing them. But someone being unhappy with your decision doesn't automatically make your decision wrong. People can disagree with your boundaries. They can misunderstand your choices. They can criticize your priorities. They can even be disappointed by you, and you can still move forward. This is one of the hardest lessons in emotional independence. You are not responsible for managing everyone's feelings about your decisions. Of course, you should treat people with respect. You should listen when someone offers sincere feedback. You should be willing to admit when you are wrong. But listening is not the same as surrendering your judgment. Learn to examine criticism without automatically accepting it. Ask, is there something useful here? If there is, learn from it. If there isn't, let it pass. Not every opinion deserves equal weight. The person who knows nothing about your circumstances should not have the same influence as someone who genuinely knows you and wants the best for you. You also need to stop confusing rejection with personal failure. Someone choosing not to be with you doesn't mean you are unworthy of love. Someone declining your opportunity doesn't mean you lack talent. Someone walking away doesn't mean your life has lost its value. Their decision is information about their choice. It is not a final verdict on your identity. The same applies to criticism. A mistake can be corrected without becoming your identity. You can admit that you handled something badly without deciding that you are a bad person. You can improve without attacking yourself. Start practicing internal approval. Before asking what everyone else thinks, ask what you think. Before seeking permission, examine your values. Before changing yourself to fit someone's expectations, ask whether the change is genuinely necessary. You may discover that some of the people you were desperately trying to impress were never thinking about you as much as you imagined, and that realization can be liberating. Your goal is not to become someone who never cares what others think. That would be unrealistic. Your goal is to become someone who can hear an opinion without automatically obeying it. Stand by your values. Own your mistakes. Accept useful feedback. Release unnecessary judgment. And understand that sometimes doing what is right for your life will disappoint someone else. That is not always a sign that you have failed. Sometimes it is the price of finally becoming your own person. The less you depend on approval to feel secure, the more freely you can live, speak, choose, and grow. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself well enough that their misunderstanding no longer controls you. Chapter 7. Close the doors that drain your emotional energy. You can spend years learning how to control your reactions, but if you constantly surround yourself with people and situations that exhaust you, protecting your peace will always feel like an uphill battle. Emotional strength is not only about becoming better at handling difficult moments. Sometimes it is about becoming brave enough to stop giving difficult things unlimited access to you. Think about the people in your life. Who leaves you feeling respected, understood, and grounded? And who leaves you feeling anxious, guilty, confused, or emotionally exhausted? The difference matters. Some relationships don't destroy your peace through one dramatic event. They drain it slowly, a conversation here, a criticism there, a constant demand for your attention, a pattern of disrespect followed by an apology, followed by the same behavior again. You keep telling yourself that you can handle it, but every interaction leaves you with less energy than before. This is where boundaries become essential. A boundary is not a threat. It is not a punishment. It is not an attempt to control another person's behavior. A boundary is a decision about what you will accept and what you will do when that limit is crossed. For example, you cannot force someone to stop speaking to you disrespectfully, but you can decide that you will end the conversation when the disrespect begins. You cannot force someone to respect your time, but you can stop making yourself constantly available. You cannot control whether someone becomes angry when you say no, but you can stop saying yes simply to keep them happy. That is the difference between control and boundaries. Many people struggle with boundaries because they confuse kindness with unlimited access. They believe being a good person means always being available, always forgiving, always explaining, and always giving another chance. It doesn't. You can be compassionate without being constantly accessible. You can forgive someone without inviting them back into the same position of influence. You can love someone and still decide that certain behavior is unacceptable. The key is consistency. A boundary that you never enforce is simply a request. If you tell someone, "Don't speak to me that way," and then continue the conversation every time they do, you teach them that your words have no consequences. You don't need to make dramatic announcements. You don't need to deliver a long speech. Sometimes the boundary is simply changing your behavior. Leave the conversation. End the call. Stop responding immediately. Reduce your availability. Say no. Walk away. Let your actions communicate what your explanations could not. This also applies to the boundaries you set with yourself. Stop checking the social media account that always makes you feel inadequate. Stop rereading conversations that keep you trapped in anger. Stop volunteering for responsibilities you secretly resent. Stop allowing your phone to dictate your attention every few minutes. Your emotional energy is limited. Spend it deliberately. A powerful question to ask is, what am I repeatedly allowing that I secretly know is hurting me? The answer may be uncomfortable. Maybe you keep returning to the same unhealthy relationship. Maybe you keep giving chances without seeing genuine change. Maybe you keep saying yes because you're afraid of being disliked. Maybe you keep exposing yourself to conversations that always end in the same emotional exhaustion. Once you identify the pattern, take one practical step to change it, not 10 steps. 1. Reduce access. Change the conversation. Communicate the limit. Stop participating. Create distance. Emotional unbreakability does not mean becoming unreachable. It means becoming intentional about who and what you allow close enough to influence you. You cannot control every person you encounter, but you can control the doors you leave open. And sometimes protecting your peace doesn't require winning a battle. It requires quietly closing the door and refusing to reopen it just because someone knocks. Chapter 8. Turn your old wounds into new weapons. Sometimes the reaction you are having today began long before the person standing in front of you entered your life. A simple comment can feel like an attack. A delayed reply can feel like abandonment. A disagreement can feel like rejection. Someone's distance can awaken a fear so deep that your response seems far bigger than the situation itself. When this happens, the present moment may only be touching an old wound. Most people try to eliminate the trigger. They avoid certain conversations, certain people, or certain situations because they are afraid of what those experiences bring out in them. But avoidance doesn't heal a wound. It simply teaches you to organize your life around it. If you want to become emotionally unbreakable, you have to become curious about your pain. Ask yourself, why does this affect me so much? Not as an accusation, as an investigation. Perhaps you grew up feeling ignored, so being overlooked today feels unbearable. Maybe you were constantly criticized, so even gentle feedback feels threatening. Perhaps someone you trusted betrayed you, and now you expect everyone to leave eventually. Maybe you learned that love had to be earned, so you constantly chase reassurance from people who give you very little. These patterns don't make you weak, they make you human. But understanding where they came from gives you an opportunity to stop repeating them. Imagine someone doesn't respond to your message. The old wound says, they don't care about you, you are being rejected. The healthier response says, I don't know why they haven't replied. I will not create a painful story without evidence. That is healing in action. You are not denying your feelings. You are refusing to let an old fear write the script for a new situation. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, am I reacting to what is happening now or to what this reminds me of? That question can reveal the difference between a present problem and a past wound. Maybe the person in front of you genuinely made a mistake, but they are not the person who hurt you years ago. Maybe today's criticism is not the same as the harsh words you heard growing up. Maybe someone's need for space isn't abandonment. Maybe disagreement isn't rejection. Your mind may recognize familiar patterns, even when the circumstances are completely different. This is why healing requires slowing down. Before reacting, look at the facts. Separate what you know from what you fear. Notice the story your mind is creating, then ask whether the evidence actually supports it. You also need to stop treating your past as a permanent identity. You may have been betrayed, but that doesn't mean you are destined to be betrayed again. You may have been rejected, but rejection is not your identity. You may have made terrible decisions, but those decisions do not have to become your character forever. Pain can shape you without owning you. Your experiences can become teachers instead of permanent prison cells. The goal is not to erase what happened. Some memories will always matter. Some losses will always hurt. Emotional strength doesn't require pretending that painful experiences were insignificant. It requires deciding what those experiences mean now. You can take the lesson without carrying the bitterness. You can become wiser without becoming suspicious of everyone. You can become cautious without becoming closed. You can remember the betrayal without allowing it to destroy your ability to trust. Start by choosing one reaction that repeatedly causes problems in your life. Find the story beneath it. Ask where that story began. Then challenge yourself to respond to today's situation based on today's evidence. Your past may explain why you react the way you do, but it does not have to decide what you do next. That is your responsibility, and that is your opportunity. Every time you recognize an old wound without allowing it to control a new decision, you reclaim another piece of yourself. Eventually, the pain that once controlled you becomes part of your wisdom. The wound remains part of your history, but it no longer holds the steering wheel. Chapter 9. Choose the person you become in the moment. There is a version of you that appears when everything is going your way. That version is easy to like, calm, patient, confident, generous. But there is another version of you that emerges when you feel rejected, insulted, ignored, betrayed, or afraid. That is the version that reveals how much control you truly have over yourself. Anyone can make good choices when life is comfortable. The real test comes when your emotions demand something different. When someone disrespects you, anger may tell you to punish them. When someone rejects you, insecurity may tell you to chase them. When someone criticizes you, pride may tell you to defend yourself immediately. When you fail, fear may tell you to quit before you can fail again. But you are not required to obey every voice that becomes loud inside your mind. This is where emotional maturity becomes a choice. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing right now?" ask a better question. Who do I want to be in this moment? That question shifts your attention from impulse to identity. Imagine you are in an argument. You feel the urge to say something cruel because you know exactly where the other person's weaknesses are. You could use that information to hurt them. You might even feel justified. But before you speak, you remember the person you want to become. Do you want to be someone who wins arguments by destroying people, or someone who can stand firm without becoming cruel? The answer determines your next sentence. This principle applies everywhere. When you are criticized, you can become defensive or curious. When you are rejected, you can collapse or recover. When someone betrays you, you can become bitter or become wiser about whom you trust. When you fail, you can label yourself a failure or examine the lesson. The event may be outside your control. Your identity in response to it is not. This is why you need a personal emotional code. Decide in advance how you want to behave when you are under pressure. Don't wait until you're furious to decide whether you'll speak respectfully. Don't wait until rejection happens to decide whether you'll chase someone who doesn't want to stay. Don't wait until betrayal to decide what your boundaries will be. Create your rules before the storm arrives. Maybe your rule is, I don't make major decisions when I'm furious. Maybe it's, I don't beg people to choose me. Maybe it's, I will accept criticism without automatically accepting the critic's judgment of my character. Maybe it's, I will never use someone's vulnerability as a weapon during an argument. Maybe it's, when I make a mistake, I will correct it instead of hiding from it. These rules become anchors. They remind you who you are when emotion tries to convince you otherwise. You will still make mistakes. You will still lose your temper sometimes. Emotional strength doesn't mean becoming perfectly controlled. It means becoming increasingly aware of your choices and taking responsibility when you fail to live up to your standards. When you react badly, don't turn the mistake into another emotional spiral. Own it. Apologize if necessary. Learn what triggered you. Then adjust your behavior. The strongest people are not those who never lose control. They are the ones who refuse to make a single bad moment their permanent identity. Every difficult situation asks you a question. Who are you going to be now? You may not choose what happened. You may not choose what someone said. You may not choose how another person behaves. But you can choose whether you become more thoughtful or more impulsive, more disciplined or more reactive, more bitter or more wise. That choice may happen in a few seconds, but its consequences can last for years. So when the next difficult moment arrives, don't simply follow your feelings. Pause. Remember your values. Remember the person you are building. Then act accordingly, because your character is not created when everything is easy. It is created in the moments when you have every reason to become someone you don't want to be and choose differently. Chapter 10. Become the person who can always return to center. There is a dangerous misunderstanding about emotional strength. People imagine that becoming unbreakable means reaching a point where nothing hurts you anymore. No disappointment can touch you, no betrayal can shake you, no criticism can make you doubt yourself, no loss can bring you to your knees. But that isn't strength. That's a fantasy. You are human. You will have moments when life gets through your defenses. You will lose people you wanted to keep. You will hear words that hurt. You will make mistakes you wish you could undo. There will be mornings when you wake up tired of being strong. Emotional unbreakability isn't about never falling apart. It is about learning how to come back. Think of your emotional center as a place inside you where your judgment, values, and self-respect remain intact. Difficult experiences can pull you away from that place. Anger can drag you toward revenge. Fear can push you toward avoidance. Rejection can make you chase people who don't value you. Pain can convince you to build walls around your entire life. The goal is not to prevent every storm. The goal is to know your way home. When you notice yourself becoming overwhelmed, begin with the simplest action. Stop adding fuel to the fire. Don't replay the conversation for hours. Don't keep checking the person's social media. Don't write imaginary arguments in your head. Don't turn one painful event into a prediction about your entire future. Give the moment room to settle, then return to your body. Breathe slowly. Take a walk. Get enough sleep. Eat something. Put your phone down. Talk to someone you trust. Sometimes emotional clarity begins with basic physical care. Once you are calmer, return to the facts. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Then ask, what am I making it mean? These questions help separate reality from the story your emotions created around it. Next, return to your values. What matters to you now? What kind of person do you want to be after this experience? What decision would allow you to respect yourself tomorrow? Those questions lead you back to center. You also need to accept that recovery is not always immediate. Some wounds take time. Some losses change you permanently. You may move forward and still have difficult days. You may think you've healed and then discover that a memory still hurts. That doesn't mean you're going backward. Healing is rarely a straight line. What matters is that you keep returning. Return after the argument. Return after the rejection. Return after the mistake. Return after the disappointment. Every time you find your way back, you strengthen the path. Eventually, you become less afraid of emotional storms because you trust your ability to survive them. You no longer need to believe that nothing bad will happen. You know that when something bad happens, you will face it. That is a different kind of confidence. It is not confidence in circumstances. It is confidence in yourself. You know you can lose someone and continue. You know you can fail and rebuild. You know you can be criticized and examine the truth without destroying yourself. You know you can be hurt without becoming hateful. You know you can be disappointed without abandoning your values. That is what makes a person emotionally difficult to break, not the absence of pain, the presence of recovery. So create your own return to center routine. Decide what you will do when emotions become overwhelming. Maybe you step away from the situation. Maybe you spend time alone. Maybe you write down what you're feeling. Maybe you talk to someone who helps you see clearly. Maybe you pray, walk, exercise, or simply sit quietly until the emotional noise becomes softer. Find what brings you back to yourself, then practice it. Because life will test you again. There is no permanent finish line where difficulty disappears forever. But the next time the storm arrives, you won't have to panic. You will know what to do. You will pause. You will breathe. You will step back. You will remember who you are, and you will return. That is the real meaning of becoming emotionally unbreakable, not becoming someone who never bends, becoming someone who always knows how to stand again. Conclusion. At some point you will be tested again. Someone will say the wrong thing. Someone will disappoint you. A person you trusted may let you down. A decision may fail. A door may close when you desperately wanted it to open. And for a moment, the old version of you may want to return. It may want to react. It may want to fight. It may want to prove something. It may want to chase someone who has already walked away. When that moment arrives, remember what you have learned. You have learned to recognize the triggers that once controlled your behavior. You have learned to create space between what you feel and what you do. You have learned that pressure doesn't have to dictate your decisions. You have learned to recognize emotional bait and refuse to participate in unnecessary battles. You have learned to release what you cannot control. You have learned that another person's opinion is not a measurement of your worth. You have learned that boundaries are not cruelty and protecting your peace is not selfishness. You have learned to look beneath your reactions and understand the wounds that created them. And perhaps most importantly, you have learned that every difficult moment gives you a choice. You cannot always choose what happens, but you can choose what happens next. That is the foundation of emotional strength. Being emotionally unbreakable does not mean becoming numb. It doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It doesn't mean walking through life with a wall around your heart. It means you can care without losing yourself. You can love without abandoning your boundaries. You can listen without surrendering your judgment. You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can experience rejection without questioning your value. You can be hurt without allowing pain to turn you into someone you don't recognize. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when you lose your patience. You may still react before thinking. When that happens, don't use your mistake as evidence that you have failed. Return to center. Apologize when necessary. Learn what happened. Adjust. Begin again. Emotional strength is built through repetition. Every time you pause instead of exploding, you strengthen it. Every time you walk away from an unnecessary argument, you strengthen it. Every time you choose your values over your impulses, you strengthen it. Eventually, you realize something profound. Your peace was never meant to depend on perfect circumstances. It was meant to become something you protect. So go forward with a different mindset. Don't ask, how can I make sure nothing ever hurts me? Ask, how can I become someone who knows what to do when it does? That is the real goal. You will feel, you will hurt, you will struggle, but you will also recover. You will return to yourself. And no matter what life places in front of you, you will remember that the final decision still belongs to you. The world can create the moment. Other people can create the trigger, but you choose the response. And when you master that choice, you become difficult to control, difficult to manipulate, and increasingly difficult to break. That is the power of not reacting. That is emotional freedom, and that is how you become emotionally unbreakable.